in regards to Jewish community history of New Zealand here. Over on this special edition over here, we're going to explore it. We know that in New Zealand, the Jews, whether by culture, ethnicity or religion, form the third largest Jewish community in the Oceania, behind Hawaii and Australia. Australia is way, way bigger, obviously 118,000 people, and New Zealand is much more. The Jewish community in New Zealand is virtually the vast majority are Ashkenazic Jews. There are other ethnic divisions also represented over there, but there were minorities like that, like Sephardi, Mizrahi and Bnei Israel. There's a number of converts, actually, just reading here from Wikipedia, to Judaism. They make up New Zealand Jewish community, which manifests, let's say, a very wide range of Jewish cultural traditions and a full spectrum of Jewish religious observances. They are a small minority, let's just say. They have let's say, a very open presence in the country since the first Jewish immigrants would arrive in the year 1829. New Zealand has had 3 Jewish prime ministers, interesting enough. Julius Vogel between the years 1873 to 1875, Francis Bell in 1925, and John Key, who would be between the year 2008 to 2016. Now, the first Jewish settlers, let's say, in New Zealand were Anglo-Jewish traders over here. The small numbers of, let's say, Anglo-Jewish immigrants, they followed some subsidized by a Jewish charity, I believe, in London, which had, let's say, a specific mission for caring for the poor and orphaned young people in the community. Let's say these subsidized Jewish immigrants were also intended by their benefactors to be devout members of the fledgling Jewish community at that point in time in Wellington, to which I think, let's say, there was a respected English business leader, someone named Abraham Hort, the older person, was sent from London to organise along London religious lines. There was difficulties of life, let's say, in the earlier parts of the colonial New Zealand, together with, historically, there was high rates, if I'm not mistaken, of intermarriage there was over there, which obviously is not a good thing. It would make it hard to maintain strict religious observation in any of the new congregations at that window, or those windows or times particularly. There was news, let's say, periods of gold rushes. Jewish immigrants poured in from new lands, such as in Germany, and then they moved on when I think there was this specific boom was over. These immigrants and others from Eastern Europe faced, let's say, more stringent immigration policy throughout the end of the 19th century and the mid-20th century. But I think Jewish New Zealanders, in of its own right, and their descendants continued to contribute, let's say, to businesses, medicine, politics, and other areas of New Zealand life that has to be pointed out over your friends, especially at the highest level possible. And there was a spectrum of Jewish religious observances which will very much continue, let's say, in communities throughout the country. The New Zealand Jewish Council, established in 1981, would, let's say, act as a representative body of Jewish communities that happen to be based in New Zealand. It responds to anti-Semitism in New Zealand and New Zealand's government's foreign policy and attitudes towards the State of Israel and the Middle East. And I think there was a survey quite recently in the year 2022, if I'm not mistaken, of anti-Semitism in New Zealand, focused attention on several areas of such concerns, such as, I think there was unfortunately Holocaust denial, and there was left-wing anti-Semitism. Obviously, post-2023 horrors of October the 7th, there has been, unfortunately, much more rises all over the world, we have to point out also. I think in 2020, there will be a new organisation, Alternative Jewish Voices, was formed by Jewish New Zealanders who distinguish, let's say, Judaism from Zionism and do not equate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, which obviously many people will argue, among myself, that this is definitely not the case over there. In that case, it usually is. It is the same hand in hand. Now, let's explore a bit of the history, the previous history with regards to the Jewish community over there. Anglo-Jewish traders were among the early immigrants from the 1830s and onwards. There was someone named Joel Samuel Pollock. He was the best known and most influential of them. He arrived in New Zealand in the year 1831. Now, Mr. Pollock was an English-born Jew. He would open, famously, a store in an area called Koroakeka in the Bay of Islands over there, where, following the tradition of centuries of European port Jews there were, his respect for that Maori people's culture will earn him a very unique access and insights as a trader. Another famous man named John Israel Montefiore. He was an English-born Jewish person. He would leave Sydney, Australia, for New Zealand, I believe in October 1831. He would go on to become a merchant in Tauranga and in Kororeka and later in Auckland. Well, I think he featured prominently in, let's say, civic affairs over there. He's a key person who we will speak about in the coming minutes. Returning briefly, let's say, to England in 1837, Mr. Pollock wrote two popular books about his in 1831 and 1837, the travels in New Zealand. In addition, let's say, he would write entertaining travel guides to new tastes, let's say Hearts of Palm, for example, sights and sounds, and so on and so forth. I think his books, let's just say, for example, were like a cry for commercial development at that point in time, so specifically for flax production, which he believed was possible on a lucrative scene in of its own right. That's something that we have to point out over here. I think it was in the year 1838, there was a testimony to the House of Lords inquiry into, let's say, there was a state of islands of New Zealand. Mr. Pollock over here warned that unorganized European settlement would destroy Maori culture and advocated at that point in time for planned colonization. With, let's say, the signing of the Treaty of the Waitangi, I think it was on 6th of February in 1840, the way would be cleared for colonization and the first legitimate immigrants at that point in time. The British government and the speculative New Zealand company, among whose financial backers was a wealthy Anglo-Jewish goldsmith family. They anticipated, let's say, wrongly, as it turned out, at least in the next few decades, that land would increase in value and encourage a flood and subsidised mostly English and Scottish immigrants over there. So let's explore a bit with regards to Mr. John Israel Montefiore. Who was he? He was born in 1807, he passed away in 1898. He was also known as John Julius Montefiore. He was one of the first Jewish settlers in New Zealand. He would become a trader, if I'm not mistaken, very famously so. Remember, the Montefiore family was a very famous family name. I don't know if it was connected to Sir Moses Montefiore or not. That would be interesting. He'll become a trader and a merchant in the far north district of the country and was later active in business and civic affairs in Auckland. He was born in London, I think in 1807 in England. The Australian merchant and financier, someone named Joseph Barrow Montefiore, famously enough, was his cousin. So this Montefiore family obviously was very famous for wealth and philanthropy. Of course, we spoke about Sir Moses on various points. Montefiore would leave London and arrive in Sydney in 1829. He would leave Sydney, I think, in 1831. He travelled to Tauranga in New Zealand. And then I think come on the year 1836 it was, he had established himself as a merchant in Kororeka. Obviously it's present day, let's say, Russell over there in the far north district. Later that year he returned to Sydney, and in March 1840, 1 month after signing of the Treaty of the Waitangi, he would go on then to return to Kororeka, I believe at that point in time, and again would open, I believe, a store most famously over there notably, which is very, very interestingly enough. Anyone tuning in live, we are exploring a few highlights of the history of the Jewish community of New Zealand over here on this special edition. So if you are new here to our channel, welcome to our community over here as we like to explore and educate and learn within regards to various different countries all over the world, as we happen to be speaking about New Zealand today. It's something that we have to point out now. We're just making a travelling at the moment to the city of Bet Shemesh. That's something that we have to point out over here, just by bus. So just gonna have to take a short minute break as we continue over here. Friends, we'll just take you can see some scenes here of Yerushalayim in the meantime. We're just by Central Bus Station. It's an aerial, obviously, with lovely views. It's not the first time we've recorded while travelling to Bet Shemesh. You speak him or come up with him? Huh? Okay, we're going to take a short minute break. 4 minutes. Which rock up? Money in the Chanel. It's need شركة رقم اشتغلت مع الشباب اللي بسبيك شنو هذا אפשר להשתמש ברב-קו שלך? יש מספרים ברב-קו שלך? אם אני לשלם לך אפשר? אז אני אפשר. יש לך רב-קו? יש לך רב-קו? לא. יש לך רב-קו? אני לשלם את מספר? אין רב-קו. You don't have a rub cup? No?
I do, but I have a nechen. I can't use it again.
Right.
That's my problem.
Oh, so you can't use it again?
No, I'm sorry.
I don't know if I have anything on it.
All right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thanks. יש כסף בכלי? כן. כמה זה היה? כמה זה היה? 12? אוקיי. זה 12 שקל. אוקיי. אוקיי, כן. כן, yes, it was. So I use it, I need to pay $14.50 for change or? Oh, wow. יש לך עודף? יש עודף על זה? You have change? אוקיי, יש 50 שקל. יש עודף של 50 או? או לא, לא, מישהו שלח שלה. אני צריך 14.
Last week.
ארי עבור כאילו.
זה פחות זה גם בסדר.
יש לי 9.
אוקיי, זה בסדר.
יש לי עוד 5.
אוקיי, כן, אוקיי, זה אפשר למצוא 50.
צריכה חצי.
אז זה בסדר. זה לא נורא. זה מעט זה בסדר, לא צריך את זה.
יש לי
גם ככה. אוקיי, כן, זה
9.
זה שתי 5? כן, כן, מצוין. תזכו למצוות, זה שלך. You have change for this? Or don't worry about it, if you don't, just take it up and it's tzedakah. Perfect. Okay, thanks. Just put me at spots. Hi everyone, sorry about the delay over there. Now we're going to continue this video. We're exploring Jewish community history over here of New Zealand here on this edition. Very, very interesting. And let's explore a few more highlights over here. So we're talking about Montefiore. Mr. Montefiore, he would leave London, arrive in Sydney in 1829. He would leave Sydney in October 1831. He would travel to Tauranga in New Zealand. Come with the year 1836, he established himself as a merchant in the far north district, I think in Russell. Later he would return to Sydney. And in March 1840, 1 month after signing of the Treaty of Waitangi, he returned to Karateka and again would open a store. I think it was in March 1841 he would go to Auckland and traded land and settle permanently there. And soon after he would establish a merchant store. He was a foundation member and supporter of the fledgling Jewish congregation. And I think with the man named David Nathan, he would secure a grant of land in 1843 on the corner of Carriaha Road and Simmons Street, or Jewish section of the Simmons Street Cemetery in Auckland, happened to be. He'd become a shareholder also in an Auckland newspaper, and in 1846 he was one of the founders of the Auckland Savings Banks. We have to point out here, so you can see he was very had prominent roles in himself. I think in 1850 he travelled back to London, but in 1855 he returned to Auckland under the persuasion of someone named John Logan Campbell. He managed some of Campbell's businesses interests and also became involved in civic affairs in Auckland. I think John Israel Montefiore eventually returned via Sydney to London and died in Hampshire on the 14th of February 1998. 1838 there was a testimony, if I'm not mistaken, to the House of Lords inquiry into the state of islands of New Zealand. Now it's interesting, Mr. Pollock warned that unorganised European settlements would go on then to destroy the Maori culture and advocated planned colonisation. I think there was signing of the Treaty of Waitangi on 6th of February 1840. The way was cleared for colonisation and the first legitimate immigrants. The British government and the speculative New Zealand company, among whose financial backers was a wealthy Anglo-Jewish goldsmith family at that point in time, they anticipated, let's say, that land would increase in value and encourage a flood of subsidised, mostly English and the Scottish immigrants over there. What's interesting now, someone named Abraham Hort Jr., related by family and business ties to the Mokata and Goldsmith Bank, arrived in Wellington on the Barque Oriental on 31st of January 1840. He was accompanied by two brothers. I think he employed as cabinet makers, Solomon and Benjamin Levy. They were the first recognisable Jewish names in this early wave, let's say, post-treaty settlement. And what's interesting, Hort's businesses and civic leadership was quickly recognised in the new colony. Within various months, I think, of his arrival, he was elected one of the two constables for Wellington's fledgling police force. And I think Mr. Hort was a prominent promoter of early Wellington civic affairs, Jewish and non-Jewish. Now, there was a man named David Nathan, who was an important Auckland businessman and benefactor, who, let's say, was very well known for establishing the firm L.D. Nathan and Company. He would leave Sydney for the Bay of the Islands on the Achilles on February 1840, respectively. David Nathan, so Nathaniel William Levin, there was also, he was an earlier, let's say, immigrant who became a notable merchant in Wellington and a politician. He arrived in Wellington, I think, on the 30th of May in 1849 on the Arishnay over there, respectively. Hort's father, Abraham Hort Sr., saw New Zealand as a possible haven for impoverished English Jews and a potential refuge for oppressed Jews of Eastern European elsewhere. The Jews' hospital, somewhere called Neve Tzedek, they would go on to sponsor two Jewish women to emigrate in 1841 on the Barque Burmouth. I think Elizabeth Levy was a sister of the Levy brothers, and it's interesting enough. Now, bills, let's say, they were allowing Jews more civic rights in England had been introduced and repeatedly voted down, and the Jews in the 19th century over there would go on to continue to be portrayed, unfortunately, with racist stereotypes. Among the promises of immigration, let's just say, for Jewish people was that the lack of manpower would level the ethnic playing fields. Now let's talk a bit about Solomon Levy, who was he? He was a Wellington settler, another very famous New Zealand person. He was born in 1817. He passed away in 1883 and was an early Wellington settler and one of the first Jewish settlers in New Zealand. He was one of the founding members of Bet El, the first synagogue in Wellington. Interesting enough, he was born in St Pancras in London in 1817, and he died 66 years of age in Blenheim in New Zealand. He was a rates collector. His wife's name was Jane Harvey, if I'm not mistaken, and I think she was born in 1833, passed in 1883. They would go on to have, I believe, 13 children. Very interesting. The brother, he was the brother of Benjamin Levy over there. So who was he? He would arrive in Wellington on an Oriental ship which departed from London 15th of September 1839. He would arrive in Wellington in January 1840, and I think it was in the year 1833. Rabbi Levy would, sorry, he wasn't a rabbi, obviously, so I'm just confused. As usually I speak about rabbis here, we're speaking anyone tuning in live this week in the history of New Zealand Jewish community history, please subscribe to the channel and join our community. So Mr. Levy married 16-year-old Jane Harvey, who arrived in Wellington in the year 1842. The couple would have 13 children, of which 8 survived to adulthood. Sadly, people lost their lives at a young age. One of their children was someone named Miriam Ballard, would go on to sign the 1893 Women's Suffrage Petition, and the family lived at 26 Bromham Street, so respectively over there. Now, Mr. Levy worked numerous jobs, including as a gold digger, during which he worked in Victoria, in Australia. He would eventually become a rates collector for the city council, but then he would resign due to poor health. He was also a trustee of the Britannia Lodge of Oddfellows for roughly 25 years, and was also a Freemason member over there. He was Jewish and could speak in Hebrew. He used the skill to teach Hebrew to Jewish children. Mr. Levy was one of the founders of the Bet El Synagogue, the first, I think, that was in Wellington, which I think was opened back in the year 1870, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, I think before he passed away, he was in poor health. Okay, yeah, sorry about that, everyone. We're just speaking a few words in regards to the history of the Jewish community over here of New Zealand. So anyone that you are tuning in live over here, welcome to our community. I think it was in early 1843, Abraham Hort Sr. would arrive in Wellington, where he organised and promoted the Jewish community with the approval of London's chief rabbi. Mr. Hort will bring with him someone named David Isaacs, also an alumnus of the Jews Hospital. Now, Isaacs would go on to serve as a mohel to perform Brit Milah. Shochet, he was kosher butcher, and a chazan, a cantor. The first religious service was performed soon after, in January 1843. A few months later, the new community celebrated the birth of Benjamin's and Esther's first child, Henry Emmanuel Levy, which Mr. Hort documented in a series of letters sent to the Jewish Chronicle, the premier London Jewish newspaper of the time, and still is very popular among secular Jews. Acting on behalf of the community, Mr. Hort requested a plot of land for a synagogue and a plot of land for Jewish burials. He offered himself as one of the trustees, and the request was originally denied, the government responding, let's say, that it didn't have the authority. The death of Levy's second son, sadly, he was aged 8 months in 1843, was, Hort wrote in the Jewish Chronicle, our first Jewish corpse, sadly, and the first Jewish burial in the new Jewish cemetery. I think throughout the early 1840s, Mr. Hort's letters to the London Jewish Chronicle and the Voice of Jacob revealed, let's say, the difficulty of maintaining a Jewish community that could barely muster a million in New Zealand, owing, let's say, to demands of making a living and so on and so forth. And there was various other issues also there at that point in time, we have to point out. There was, I think, a Maori massacre that would take place, the threat of forced military service for all. That was another thing. And the extreme difficulty of making a living took their toll on the small community. That there was isolation rapidly gave way to the unfortunate intermarriage at that point in time. Now, Solomon Levy quickly married Jane Harvey, and now I think she wasn't Jewish, actually, interesting enough. And I think only one of his children reported over here, of the 8 surviving children, would choose Judaism as a religion, sadly. So you can see he was a big victim of intermarriage over there in New Zealand at that point in time. What's interesting, Mr. Levy helped find the first Wellington synagogue and taught Hebrew to Jewish children there for many years. So albeit that he would, at least one child will continue over there. I think in the years 1849 to 1850, there was a California gold rush that would lead to an exodus of early New Zealand Jewish settlers, including Joel Samuel Pollock, Benjamin Levy, and Abraham Hort. For those, let's say, who remained gold rushers in New Zealand in the 1860s. And the Otago Gold Rush from 1861 and the West Coast Gold Rush from 1864 were going to shift their businesses from centres like Auckland and Wellington to new towns like Sir Julius Vogel, to Dunedin in the South Island. And I think come 1862, the congregation in Dunedin had 43 members. Those drawn to gold strikes in the 1860s and afterwards were instrumental in founding businesses and helping to erect the many synagogues that were established at that point in time. And let's talk about 20th century New Zealand. As a result of restrictions, to say, put into place earlier. Few Jews were granted refuge in New Zealand before, during or after the Holocaust. First called enemy aliens, you can see how terrible it was because of their German nationality. Popular sentiment suggested that they leave as soon as the war was over, as they were competing with New Zealanders for work. The major veterans group, the Return Service Association, I think in 1945 suggested that not only should the enemy aliens go back where they came from, but that any money they had made during their stay should be turned over to the wives and children of the soldiers who had risked their lives while the Jews had allegedly stayed safely in New Zealand. You can see the terrible anti-Semitism there was. Dozens of Jewish men and women from New Zealand had joined British Commonwealth forces during World War II, mainly serving in the RAF. More recently, I think Jewish immigrants came from South Africa, Israel, and the former Soviet Union over there. So let's talk about the role of leadership here for a minute. 3 prime ministers had Jewish ancestry. Julius Vogel served twice during the 1870s. He practiced Judaism. Francis Bell was prime minister in 1925. And former prime minister John Key was born to an Austrian Jewish mother. Also, but I don't know, I have to double check if she's halakhically Jewish. And it's thus under halakha considered Jewish, interesting enough, but I don't think he's religious himself in of itself. So let's explore a bit with regards to Sephardic influence, as we are exploring the Sephardic history here on this channel. That we know that in New Zealand, Jewish history was present for key individuals, especially there was a man named Leopold Vergil. Okay, shalom everyone. We're exploring history with regards to New Zealand. Let's just speak a bit about more recent history. There's a school called Moriah School. Wellington's only Jewish day school opened in 1985. It closed in 2012 because there was a lack of resources. In 2010, the practice of shechita, that's a ritual slaughter, such as cows, sheep, chickens, would unfortunately suffer controversy, a snag, when the Minister of Agriculture reversed the decision that had banned it. The issue was about to be heard in the High Court. There's pressure, let's just say, from Jewish community members who wanted to slaughter poultry in the traditional manner, would promote the move in itself. I think in recent years, there's a growing community of the Chabad movement, which established in several cities, including, I think, in Auckland, for example, there's a Chabad house. Unfortunately, was destroyed in 2011 earthquake, I believe, that would hit New Zealand in national Jewish. And there'll be international fundraising efforts to help the community rebuild. In 2019, there was assistance of the Wolf Fisher Trust. The Auckland Hebrew congregation purchased the campus of St. Kentigern Girls' School in Rumeria. I think Kadima over there will relocate, if I'm not mistaken, from Grays Avenue to the Remuera campus in 2023. There's other Jewish organizations we have to point out. And the Kosher Cafe Delhi will also, let's say, was in the process of relocating to the site, which will create, let's say, the main hub for Jewish life in Auckland. There is a Reformed congregation also called Bet Shalom over there, which I think relocated. There's a Moish house over there that's in Auckland that joins an international network of homes that serve as a Jewish communal hub for young adults over there. The founding of the synagogues, there's apparently reports over 7 synagogues in New Zealand. 3 early synagogues at Nelson, Hokitika and Timuri, and Hokitika's synagogue would serve the boom and bust of the gold rush. Jewish population. It was abandoned literally for the last decades of the 19th century. It was known as the Ghost Synagogue. The Dunedin Synagogue was established at Dunedin in September 1863 and lays claim, let's say, to the southernmost permanent synagogue. The Canterbury Hebrew Synagogue obtained funds in 1863 to build a small wooden synagogue on a block of land of Gloucester Street. The next synagogue was the Bet El Synagogue, which was built and opened in 1881. The first synagogue in Wellington was Bet El, established in 1870 in the inside the terrace itself, respectively, and site was required to be vacated for motorway construction in 1963. And New Wellington Jewish Community Centre was opened, I think, in Wab Street, and I think there was also a progressive community also that was opened at that window of time. We have to point out over here. So that's also another very interesting tidbit we have to point out over here. Friends, anyone tuning in live, we're exploring the Jewish community history of New Zealand here on this special edition over here, just in a bit of windy weather. In Auckland, the synagogue building was designed in 1884, 1885 and opened in November 1885. The building still stands at Princes Street. has heritage protection and is known in the University House. Now, as of 23, the AHC, Auckland Hebrew Congregation, was the largest Jewish community in New Zealand. That's to say, I think it had moved at that point in time. Sorry about this, just weather at the moment. I think it would move to a new location in Remuera after 50 years in the iconic custom-built synagogue in Grays Avenue. The community made the decision to move to the suburbs, which has a higher density of the Jews compared to the previous city location. I think in 1848, in New Zealand's total European population, there was 16,000 there, were known to be at least 61 Jews, 28 in Wellington. There was a census that gives 6,867 people identifying as a Jewish religious affiliation, interestingly enough, of a total of 4 million population in there. We're going to speak a bit more. We're just about a few of the rabbis just in a minute. We're just going to take a short, very short break over here at the moment. As friends, we're a community here, and we're exploring about the history of the New Zealand Jewish community here on this special edition over here. We're just going on a bus journey just from Jerusalem, the capital city of Israel. I want to speak a bit about the rabbis also inside a minute, so I don't want to record another video in of itself per se, but yeah, very, very interesting. We might go actually into a part two, to be honest with you, within regards to this series. I think we might have to do that, friends. Anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community as we are exploring the history of the New Zealand Jewish community today. We've already spoken, friends, about a staggering 45 countries inside this series over here, as we're trying to go through. The aim is to go to even 100 countries, I think, over here. I don't see why we can't achieve that. That will be a phenomenal achievement if we can do that, as we're going from strength to strength and learning Jewish wisdom, Jewish culture, Jewish history here on this channel. Friends, we also record videos on the daily tidbits of Daf Yomi. We've recorded about 1,100 videos within regard association to that. We record videos on current Jewish events, topics like will go on every single day inside the Jewish and diaspora world. We've recorded biography videos of about 1,400 videos here on this channel, which I recommend everyone to browse if you're watching at the moment live, and browse through the channel and explore various different happenings that actually happen in the Jewish community history itself. The countries that we've spoken about, many people will not necessarily grapple with. We've related historic videos with regards to Pakistan, Afghanistan, all those different places, and we've also recorded videos over here within regards to the United States of America, Panama, Costa Rica. We've delved into Europe. We've spoken about Belgium and the Netherlands, and various different places. We're planning to speak about maybe England in due course. Also, that would be great to also go back to my native place and speak about that. Also, one exciting thing that we do on our community is we record with different rabbinic personality every single day. We will speak to and get them to give a burst of wisdom, inspiration, to really inject and promote the Torah Eretz Israel in of itself, and the importance of learning Torah in Israel, and so on and so forth. That's something something else that we have to very much elaborate on here inside this series over here. So actually, we're going to go into this week into the Torah portion of Beshalach, which very much represents Kriyat Yam Suf, all the miracles at the sea. We are going to record a special feature we recorded yesterday on this channel within regards to that. So I would recommend everyone to watch over that specific video we recorded just yesterday within regards to that inside our beautiful community over here. So yeah, today we're speaking about the Jewish community history of New Zealand. It's the third largest Jewish community, I think, in that specific area of the Oceania, respectively. The largest one happens to be Australia, and we do plan, hopefully, at one stage in time, to record a video within regards to the history of the Australian Jewish community. That's something very much we would like to do over here and explore within regards to that. Now, New Zealand's obviously got a very fragile, much more smaller Jewish community than obviously many of the other countries that we've spoken about at the moment. It only started in 1800 over there. We spoke about some of the notable figures, and yeah, very, very interesting. Come inside. Wait, hold on a minute. Yeah, where are you going?
What? Back to the house.
Oh, so come in the car, I'll give you a ride. Well, over here. Yes, so come through. Yeah. Yeah, so everyone tuning in live, welcome at the moment. Oh, sticker. It's closed. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So welcome everyone to our community. We're exploring the history of the Jewish community of New Zealand over here. So everyone, I think we're gonna call it there. We're gonna do a part 2 where we can explore about some of the rabbis that there might have been in previous times and so on and so forth. So can you shut the door? Wait, hold on over here. Need to close the door. Yeah. Yeah, so as we're exploring some of the histories, I do want to continue this video over here, so we will take a short break for a minute. And yeah, we started this video over here in Jerusalem. There were some chief rabbis in the country of yesteryear. That's something that I will very much have to elaborate on and point out over here. So we're going to speak about them in the coming couple of minutes. We're going to take a short 1 minute break now over here. So please, everyone, watch your space. We will come back and speak more with in regards to some of the rabbis, the great rabbis that there were, that would really, let's say, make an imprint in New Zealand history over here. So just from me, just for a minute. In the meantime, while we're taking this break, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, join our community, and learn more about great rabbis of yesteryear. Browse through the channel in the meantime. Friends, we are trying to get to 8,500 subscribers by the time period of Tu B'Shvat, the Jewish festival of Tu B'Shvat. So don't forget to join in, tell all your friends about it. I was in Jerusalem today actually, and we saw many fans of the channel that watch many of the different great Torah videos in of itself. So that's very, very interesting. So yeah, so please everyone, over there, we're going to take a short break now, and yeah, we'll be back in 1 minute, friends, over here. Sorry, just think Oh, it's whatever.